LE SSERAFIM Spaghetti stretches the group's image to what I would say is their most self-aware limits yet. They compare themselves to spaghetti, twisting and tangled yet still irresistible no matter how many times they've been boiled alive in the cooking pot of public scrutiny. The metaphor is ridiculous, but that's a big part of what makes it so great to me. It's fully realized. The concept is met. Despite being just a single, the conceptual side of promotion has been so solid. You know, tomato visuals thrown onto the previous album covers on streaming services help to centralize the song's premise. When people boo and throw tomatoes at you, you make spaghetti. An analogy to making lemonade out of lemons, right? But the metaphor of throwing tomatoes at performers is especially striking here. The people throwing the tomatoes are in the audience in the first place, right? They came here specifically to see and hear what LE SSERAFIM had to say. The song begins with a suddenly dense and focused production that immediately establishes this kind of ironic tension. The instrumental is driven by layered synths, a steady bass foundation, and an eventual rhythmic pulse that keeps the track in a whimsical, very quirky disposition. We start off with very light and whispered tones. Again, LE SSERAFIM doesn't have to speak very far to the opposition because they're already close enough and listening very intently. For such a silly song premise, the irony cuts very deep. People claim they've had enough of LE SSERAFIM, yet they keep coming back for more, ultimately feeding the same spectacle they pretend to despise or be above. The song speaks directly to that contradiction, pointing out how we as K-pop fans oftentimes can't help but center ourselves in everything. Even when it isn't about us, we make it about us. I think that's part of the shared sickness of being terminally online, and it's also a testament to LE SSERAFIM's awareness of how this dynamic implicates them as artists, knowing that some people can't be helped in their misery. Beneath Spaghetti's immediate humor is an edge that feels so unfortunately earned. LE SSERAFIM certainly knows what it's like to be consumed by an audience, to have every movement and mistake picked apart and served back to them with commentary ad nauseum. Here, they move to reclaim this narrative in some ways that actively reshape the ethos established at their debut. LE SSERAFIM acknowledges the scrutiny that follows them, but reframes it as proof of their relevance. The lyrics outline the odd contradiction between bad faith criticism and continued engagement, pointing to how people return to the work regardless of public opinion. You know, using those metaphorical tomatoes that people throw at them to make something meaningful, to make something of substance. On the surface, this song is smooth, punchy, and playful, but if you sit with it for a second, there's this deeper commentary going on about attention, taste, and what we consume culturally. There's that cowbell in the background. It's brief, but it does something very clever.
In the kitchen, cooking it up, what you crapping?
To me, it functions like the clinking of glasses you would hear from the kitchen in the back of the restaurant. The verses and pre-choruses are LE SSERAFIM ushering us into the restaurant before the spaghetti in question is served. Sakura's line, "and now the world's gone mad," is the perfect usher into that smooth, retro 80s synthwave that follows. I think it's my favorite part of the song. We're suddenly in a whole new emotional space. It feels like the narrator's luring this miserable, performatively critical guest into their world. You know, you've already claimed to hate what they're serving, but you're still sitting down, a plate in hand, ready to eat, right? And then a sudden bending guitar riff drops. We're thrown into this punchy chorus. The members' voices hit sharper here. They're clearer and more pronounced, like they're taking full control of the narrative now. It's like they're taunting the listener simply by outlining how ridiculous this scenario actually is. That you showed up to LE SSERAFIM restaurant in the city center of Fear Notville fully prepared to not like it. You are forcing yourself to be miserable. And with consideration, how is that really the fault of LE SSERAFIM? The way the track flips between these smooth and aggressive sections mirrors this love-hate cycle perfectly, in my opinion. And to me, this is really what Spaghetti is all about. It's a tongue-in-cheek reflection on the consumption of media and culture. The people who claim to despise an artist often engage with them the most. It's very fashionable to find problems in everything, especially in K-pop where it feels like everything is under a microscope. LE SSERAFIM now seems acutely aware of this, and importantly, what it means for them, and they're choosing to lean into it. While Spaghetti is well composed as it is, I do think a bridge that developed the ideas and feelings from the synthwave pre-chorus would have been so excellent. But even without it, the layering throughout, like the way the song keeps shifting and retexturing itself, makes it feel dynamic enough without a bridge. And then you get J-Hope's feature, which really ties the whole concept together. He adds a very cool confidence that importantly reinforces the message of the song. People actively show up for the things they claim to hate. BTS is the #1 example of this. The release format as a single marks a shift from LE SSERAFIM's usual approach. You know, their earlier EPs were known for conceptual continuity across a short series of tracks, while Spaghetti functions as a standalone statement with a single B-side. I have a lot of thoughts about this that are just up in the air right now. The 2-song tracklist focuses attention and allows the group to explore one idea in great depth. While it forgoes the broader emotional range that we usually get with an EP, I do think the single format benefits in some ways from the concentration. right? The accompanying B-side Pearlies serves as a softer extension of the same idea presented in Spaghetti. We get what is maybe the most confessional narrative we've seen from LE SSERAFIM to date, a retrospective look at the sentiments expressed at their debut. From "the world is my oyster" to "my oyster is the world." LE SSERAFIM already has what they need to become fully realized. They've taken on the world and got burned for doing so. This shift in narrative seems to suggest a focus on the idea that true fearlessness must come from within, from matters that are within your own control. On first impression, I can make a lot of comparisons to Crazy when it comes to this comeback. Where Crazy explored ideas of ambition and self-determination, Spaghetti examines perception and, I guess, persistence. Both songs share a focus on self-worth within public scrutiny, but Spaghetti simplifies the framing. The tone is less reflective this time. The lyrics acknowledge external attention, but no longer seek to justify it or explain it. They don't owe an explanation for why people are obsessed with hating them. They just use the opportunity to spin that vitriol into artistic inspiration. It may not carry the narrative depth of the group's multi-track releases, but it excels in focus and execution. These two songs do so much to establish an understood shift in worldview for LE SSERAFIM as artists. I feel like this functions as a narrative intermission in their storytelling, sort of a shift in lane. As silly as it is in retrospect, the song captures their growth as artists who understand their own image and can shape it intentionally. It converts public attention into creative direction, reflecting the group's ability to maintain control over their message in an environment that so often challenges it. I think these are my thoughts overall on first impression. Spaghetti feels like a simplified version of Crazy. It strips away a lot of the abstraction and just says, you being miserable is not really my problem. It's not trying to be elusive or poetic about that anymore. And I think that works in the song's favor, honestly. The result is something that might be less dense conceptually, but it's LE SSERAFIM at their most honest we've ever seen them. They're not using as many metaphors this time. It's still playful, but also sincere. That kind of self-awareness lands nicely when it's delivered so casually, through something as unserious sounding as a song called Spaghetti. So yeah, while not as conceptually packed, I think it achieves something different in a meaningful way, arguably just as valuable. I'm very interested to see how this release will shape the next arc of LE SSERAFIM's career. I really think it's going to spur a shift in perspective when it comes to their storytelling. Thank you for watching this. If you did, let me know what you think about Spaghetti. Do you think the concept was met well enough with just the two songs? How do you feel about the songs themselves? And things like that. Yes, thanks again for watching. Subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time.